Just imagine this for a moment. You cross the border from one African country to another African country for a business meeting. The moment you land, your phone bill triples. You're now paying international roaming rates on a continent where those two countries share a border of less than 700 kilometers. Now ask yourself, how is Africa supposed to build a single digital market when we can't even make an affordable phone call across borders? That's exactly what the One Africa network is trying to fix. And today I'm going to take you inside that initiative, what it is, where it stands, what's working, and what still needs to happen. One of the most common frustrations I hear from ICT ministers and regulators across the continent is this. We have the political will, we have the agreements on paper, but implementation keeps hitting the same walls. And they're right to be frustrated, because here's what the data tells us. Africa has over 50 countries. We have over 500 million mobile phone users. We have regional blocks such as the EAC, ECOWAS, SADC, COMESA, all of which have made some form of commitment to reducing cross-border roaming costs. And yet, as recently as early 2026, the EAC Secretariat released a report confirming that more than 12 years after their One Network area was launched in East Africa, telcos are still defying the price caps, still setting their own roaming tariffs, still creating barriers to the very regional integration that heads of state have committed to. So what's going on? And where does the One Africa network fit into all of this? What is the One Africa network? The One Africa network, or OAN, is a flagship initiative of the Smart Africa Alliance. Its core objective is straightforward: make cross-border international roaming mobile communication across Africa more affordable, more seamless and more secure. It operates by working with Africa Union, AFC, FTA, African governments, national regulators, mobile network operators and regional economic communities to harmonize regulatory frameworks, reduce roaming charges and ultimately eliminate the friction of cross-border connectivity. Think of it as Africa's version of what Europe achieved with Roam Like at Home. But for the case of Africa, this is across more than 50 countries, 8 regional blocks and vastly different regulatory environments. The regional building blocks. The OAN doesn't operate in isolation. It builds on regional frameworks already in motion. The most advanced of these is the EAC1 network area, or ONA, which was first piloted by Kenya, Uganda and Rwanda in 2015 and has since expanded to include Tanzania, Burundi and South Sudan. The DRC and Somalia are working toward alignment. In West Africa, ECOWAS has been rolling out phased free roaming initiatives. Countries like Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, Sierra Leone and the Gambia are now offering free or significantly reduced incoming calls under the ECOWAS Free Roaming Initiative. In Southern Africa, SADC made a major move in early 2026 with 5 member states, Malawi, Lesotho, Mozambique, Zambia and Zimbabwe, announcing harmonized mobile roaming tariffs under their own One Network area framework. Some data roaming charges dropped by more than 90%. Progress is real, but it's fragmented. And fragmentation is exactly what the OAN at continental level is designed to address. The hard truths. Now here's where I have to be honest with you, because this is not a channel that deals in hype. The challenges facing the One Africa network are significant. And if you don't name them, we can't solve them. First, regulatory compliance. Even where frameworks exist, enforcement is weak. In East Africa, telcos have been found setting their own tariffs above the agreed caps. The EAC Secretariat's own report calls it out directly. Second, infrastructure gaps. Seamless roaming requires interoperable networks, but not all countries have equivalent infrastructure investment. Landlocked countries in particular face higher transit costs that feed directly into roaming prices. Third, operator incentives. Roaming has historically been a high-margin revenue stream for mobile operators. Asking them to reduce those margins, even under a regulatory mandate, requires careful management of the commercial equation. Without it, you risk operators finding workarounds, or worse, withdrawing services altogether. And fourth, the data price disparity problem. Before the recent progress made in the SADC region, researchers in some few years back found that 1 gigabyte of data in Malawi used to cost about 38 cents when on international roaming. In neighboring Zambia, the same gigabyte used to cost around $8 when roaming. In Zimbabwe, it was over $43 when roaming. This was more than 100 times Malawi's domestic rate. A roaming agreement doesn't automatically fix that. It requires deeper structural reform. The strategic insight. Here's what I want you to take away from the strategic picture. The One Africa network is not just a telecommunications project. It is a digital integration project, and the distinction matters enormously. When a trader in Kampala can call her supplier in Nairobi at a local rate when roaming, that is AFCFTA becoming real, when a student in Dakar can access online resources while using international roaming services in Abidjan without a punishing data bill, that is human capital development becoming tangible. The Smart Africa Alliance has been deliberate about this framing. The OAN is explicitly aligned with the AU Digital Transformation Strategy, the AFCFTA Protocol on Digital Trade, and the UN Broadband Commission's goals on affordable connectivity. It is a continental initiative backed by over 40 heads of state. But political commitment and regulatory reality are two different things. And the gap between them, that's where the real work happens. The opportunity here is immense. The risk is that we keep producing frameworks that look good on paper but fail to deliver at the last mile. At the border post, in the hands of the trader, in the pocket of the student. What bridges that gap is not more resolutions. It is enforcement architecture, operator accountability, and investment in the underlying infrastructure that makes harmonization technically possible. The practical takeaways. Whether you're a regulator, a policymaker, a development partner, or a private sector leader, here's what I'd encourage you to focus on. 1. Strengthen enforcement mechanisms. Agreeing on price caps is the beginning, not the end. Regulators need the technical capacity and the legal mandate to actually hold operators accountable. 2. Align infrastructure investment with roaming ambitions. You cannot achieve seamless roaming on fragmented infrastructure. Broadband backbone investment and roaming policy reform must move together. 3. Bring operators into the design, not just the implementation. The commercial model has to work for mobile network operators, or the reductions will not be sustained. Smart regulation means understanding the business case on both sides. 4. Accelerate eSIM adoption. The next phase of OAN must account for eSIM technology, IoT roaming, and data-driven services. The EAC is already working on this. It needs to be a continental standard. 5. Measure outcomes, not just outputs. The metric is not how many countries signed an agreement. The metric is whether the cross-border trader in Lilongwe actually paid less on her phone bill this year than last year. Conclusion. The One Africa network represents one of the most ambitious and most necessary digital integration efforts on this continent. The political will is there. The regional building blocks are forming. What Africa now needs is the discipline to move from agreement to implementation, from resolutions to results. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone in the sector who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.